Victor Hale smirked as he slid the dismissal letter across his steel desk. In front of hundreds of factory workers, he called Amelia Brooks too overweight to represent the future of this company. No one defended her, even though they knew she was innocent, simply because Victor Hale's power was too great. She silently removed her security badge, wished everyone good luck, and left without looking back. 72 hours later, America's most advanced robotics production line suddenly shut down. Millions of dollars vanished every hour. Engineers from Germany, Japan, and Italy desperately searched for the cause, but all their attempts failed. Then, a convoy of black SUVs rolled through the factory gates. Only then did everyone discover the horrifying truth. The woman they had humiliated was not just an ordinary engineer. She was the only one who truly understood the multi-billion-dollar system that ran the entire plant. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, more than 3,000 employees worked alongside nearly 2,000 industrial robots that welded, assembled, painted, and inspected luxury vehicles with astonishing precision. Every 90 seconds, another finished vehicle rolled off the production line. To visitors, the factory looked almost magical. To Amelia Brooks, it looked alive. She didn't simply repair machines, she understood them. While most engineers relied on diagnostic software, Amelia could recognize a malfunction just by listening to the rhythm of robotic arms moving across the line. She noticed vibrations others ignored. She sensed timing errors invisible on computer screens. Years of experience had taught her that every machine had a language. It was why the technicians often joked, "If Amelia can't fix it, nobody can." She always laughed when she heard that. "I'm just stubborn enough to keep looking," she'd reply. Despite her reputation among the engineering staff, Amelia never sought attention. She preferred grease-stained coveralls over business suits and spent more time mentoring junior technicians than talking to executives. One of those technicians was Sophia Bennett. Fresh out of engineering school, Sophia admired Amelia more than anyone else in the building. "I don't understand how you find these problems so quickly," Sophia admitted one evening while watching Amelia inspect a robotic welding station. Amelia smiled without looking up. "The computer only tells you what failed," she said. "It never tells you why." That simple philosophy had saved the company millions of dollars over the years. Unfortunately, very few people outside the engineering department knew it, or rather, they had been prevented from knowing. Victor Hale had become production supervisor 2 years earlier. Tall, confident, impeccably dressed, and gifted with polished presentations, Victor excelled at impressing senior management. Every quarterly meeting featured charts highlighting record production numbers, reduced downtime, and successful automation projects. His name appeared on nearly every achievement. The only problem, most of those achievements weren't actually his. Whenever Amelia developed a faster calibration method, Victor presented it as a management initiative. When she prevented an expensive shutdown by redesigning a robotic synchronization sequence, Victor accepted the corporate award. When headquarters requested technical reports explaining the improvements, Victor quietly removed Amelia's name before submitting the documents. At first, Amelia protested. After several meetings ended with empty promises, she stopped trying. She cared more about keeping the factory running than receiving recognition. Victor understood that, and he took advantage of it. Over time, his behavior became increasingly personal. He criticized Amelia's appearance during meetings. He assigned her the most physically demanding maintenance shifts. He approved overtime for everyone except her. Even performance evaluations included comments unrelated to engineering. "Needs a more professional appearance. Doesn't project executive potential. Poor representation of company image." Everyone knew exactly what those comments meant. No one challenged them. One afternoon, Ethan Cole, the plant director, noticed Amelia eating lunch alone in the maintenance workshop. "You've been avoiding the cafeteria," he observed. She shrugged. It's quieter here. He looked unconvinced. I've read your latest evaluation. So have I. It doesn't make sense. Amelia gave him a tired smile. Some things aren't worth arguing about. Ethan wanted to ask more, but his phone rang before he could continue. Corporate headquarters. Another meeting. Another deadline. By the time he returned, Amelia had already gone back to work. Meanwhile, Victor was preparing something far more serious. During the monthly executive review, he presented a proposal titled Modernizing the Engineering Department. His slides emphasized youth, image, leadership presence, and customer confidence. Then came one sentence hidden halfway through the presentation. Several senior technical positions no longer align with the company's future branding. No names appeared. No one asked questions. The proposal received immediate approval. Victor smiled. He already knew exactly who would be removed. 3 days later, Amelia was called into his office. No witnesses. No discussion. Only a sealed envelope resting on the desk. Victor folded his hands confidently. The company is restructuring. Amelia didn't touch the envelope. So this has already been decided. It has. My performance isn't the reason. Victor hesitated for barely a second. We're looking toward the future. She looked directly into his eyes. The future doesn't care what an engineer looks like. It cares about results. Victor leaned back in his chair. The board disagrees. For a brief moment, complete silence filled the room. Then Amelia slowly picked up the envelope. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't even seem angry. Instead, she removed her employee identification badge and placed it carefully on Victor's desk. I hope, she said calmly, that the next person knows the system as well as you think they do. Victor couldn't resist one last remark. We'll manage. Amelia nodded. I sincerely hope so. She turned toward the door before stopping one final time. Without facing him, she quietly added, when the factory needs me most, I won't be here. Victor laughed. The factory doesn't need any one person. Amelia walked out without another word. Outside the building, Sophia saw her carrying a cardboard box filled with manuals, notebooks, and a single framed photograph of the original robotics team. What happened? Sophia whispered. Amelia forced a gentle smile. They've decided it's time for someone else. This is insane. Everyone knows you're the best engineer here. That won't matter until something breaks. She placed the box inside her old pickup truck. Before driving away, Amelia looked one last time at the enormous factory that had consumed nearly 15 years of her life. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She simply wondered how long it would take before someone realized that the most dangerous part of losing an engineer wasn't replacing the person. It was replacing the knowledge that walked out the door with them. The first day after Amelia left felt almost normal. Production targets were met. The robotic welding cells operated with their usual precision. Victor Hale walked confidently across the factory floor, convinced he had proven an important point. The line had survived without its so-called irreplaceable engineer. He even joked during the morning briefing, I guess we all know now that nobody is indispensable. A few supervisors laughed. Others remained silent. Noah Carter didn't laugh. As the senior automation engineer, he had worked beside Amelia for nearly 8 years. He knew there was a difference between following procedures and understanding the system. Amelia understood the system. The rest of them understood the manuals. Those weren't the same thing. Late that afternoon, Noah noticed something unusual. Robot Cell 47, one of the laser-guided welding stations responsible for aligning the aluminum chassis, paused for less than half a second before every cycle. The delay was so brief that production statistics barely registered it. Most operators never noticed. Noah did. He checked the diagnostic logs. Everything appeared normal. Motor temperatures were stable. Laser alignment was within tolerance. Sensor readings showed no faults. Still, the hesitation bothered him. He made a note to investigate during the night maintenance window. Unfortunately, the opportunity never came. At exactly 9:17 the following morning, every warning light above production line 3 turned red. One robotic arm froze in mid-air. Another stopped halfway through a precision weld. Within seconds, the entire synchronized automation network shut itself down. A deafening silence spread across the factory. Then came the alarms. Operators stepped away from the equipment. Forklifts stopped moving. Conveyor belts ground to a halt. Thousands of unfinished vehicles remained trapped along the production line. The shutdown protocol had activated automatically. No one had ever seen it happen. Victor rushed into the central control room. What happened? No one answered immediately. The engineers were too busy staring at their monitors. Finally, Noah spoke. The synchronization controller lost communication with the adaptive calibration network. Victor frowned. Fix it. We're trying. Then try faster. For the next 4 hours, every available engineer worked through the system. They rebooted servers, replaced communication modules, swapped processors, reset every programmable logic controller connected to the production network. Nothing worked. Each restart produced a different error. It was as if the factory itself had forgotten how its own machines communicated. By noon, plant director Ethan Cole arrived. Status. Noah took a deep breath. We don't know. You don't know. The failure doesn't match any documented fault. Ethan looked toward the silent production floor. Every minute, the line remained idle, cost the company nearly $400,000. By evening, the estimated losses had already exceeded $8 million. Corporate headquarters immediately declared a Level 1 operational emergency. Specialists were flown in from 3 international engineering partners. The German automation team arrived first, then experts from Japan. Finally, 2 senior robotics consultants landed from Italy before sunrise. For nearly 24 hours they worked side by side. They examined software architecture, hardware redundancy, laser calibration, network timing, power stability, electromagnetic interference. Every theory collapsed. Every repair failed. The factory remained completely silent. Meanwhile, hundreds of customers across North America and Europe began calling dealerships after learning that vehicle deliveries had been delayed indefinitely. The largest concern wasn't public relations. It was a confidential contract. Only a handful of executives knew the details. Orion Motor Group had just secured an agreement worth nearly $1 billion to manufacture a limited series of luxury electric vehicles for international markets. The first shipment was scheduled within days. If production failed to resume within 48 hours, the client had the legal right to cancel the agreement. When Ethan shared that information with Victor, the confidence disappeared from his face. There has to be another option, Victor muttered. There is. What? Ethan looked directly at him. Find Amelia. Victor remained silent. Noah spoke before anyone else could. She's the only person who rebuilt the adaptive synchronization system after the power surge 5 years ago. One of the German engineers looked surprised. Wait. She designed part of this architecture? Noah nodded. Most of it. The room fell completely quiet. Another consultant from Japan frowned while reviewing old documentation. That's impossible. What is? Every engineering report credits Victor Hale. Slowly, everyone turned toward Victor. He immediately defended himself. I supervised the project. Noah's voice remained calm. No, you presented it. You didn't build it. No one said another word. For the first time since the shutdown began, people started asking a different question. Not what had failed, But who had really built the system they were trying to save? Victor's hands trembled slightly as he picked up his phone. He stared at Amelia's contact information for several seconds before pressing the call button. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. He tried again. No answer. He sent a message. No reply. By the third attempt, panic had replaced pride. He finally whispered the sentence he never imagined saying, "We need her." Outside the factory, Amelia sat on the wooden porch of her small lakeside cabin with a cup of coffee in her hands. Her phone vibrated across the table. Victor's name appeared on the screen. She looked at it for a moment, then quietly turned the phone upside down. The call stopped. Seconds later, it began ringing again. Amelia smiled to herself. She had expected this, just not this soon. Victor Hale had never driven so fast in his life. His luxury sedan tore down the empty highway toward the lakeside community where Amelia Brooks had lived for years. Every passing mile reminded him of the production reports waiting on his desk. $42 million. That was the estimated loss after less than 2 days. If the international contract collapsed, the damage would be measured in billions. He had spent years convincing everyone that he was the man responsible for Orion's automation success. Now the entire company was discovering the truth. When Victor pulled into Amelia's driveway, he found her kneeling beside a small vegetable garden, wearing old jeans and work gloves. She looked happier than he had ever seen her inside the factory. She glanced toward the expensive sedan without standing up. I wondered how long it would take. Victor forced a smile. "We need to talk. I think you need to." She brushed the dirt from her hands before inviting him onto the porch. Victor expected anger. Instead, Amelia offered him coffee. The kindness made him even more uncomfortable. He placed a folder on the table. "The company wants you back. I don't work there anymore. We'll double your salary. No. We'll make you senior director. No. You can have your own engineering division." Amelia quietly stirred her coffee. "You still don't understand." Victor leaned forward. "The factory is dying." "No," she calmly corrected him. "The factory is waiting. It was built to depend on knowledge. You decided knowledge wasn't valuable." For the first time in years, Victor had no clever response. Finally, he lowered his voice. "What do you want?" Amelia looked directly at him. "I don't negotiate with people who fired me because of my appearance." Victor's shoulders slumped. This isn't about appearance anymore. It always was. She stood and picked up the termination letter she had folded neatly into a drawer. "You never once criticized my engineering. You criticized my body, my clothes, my image. You evaluated everything except the quality of my work." Victor stared at the floor. "I made mistakes. You made choices." There was a difference. Before he could continue, another vehicle entered the driveway. Then another, and another. 3 identical black SUVs stopped silently beside the house. Their windows were tinted. Their license plates carried no state markings. Victor frowned. "Who are they?" Amelia looked just as surprised. "I have no idea." The rear door of the first SUV opened. An older man wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit stepped onto the gravel path. No bodyguards walked beside him. None were necessary. Every person in the automotive industry knew his name. Very few had ever seen his face. Dominic Moretti, the billionaire owner of Orion Motor Group. A man so private that most employees believed he never visited his own factories. Victor's face instantly lost its color. Mr. Moretti." Dominic ignored him completely. Instead, he walked toward Amelia and extended his hand. "Ms. Brooks, I believe we've never had the pleasure of meeting." She shook his hand cautiously. "I don't believe we have." I wish it had happened under better circumstances. Dominic glanced toward Victor for only a brief moment. May we talk? Amelia nodded. They sat on the porch, while Victor remained standing several feet away, uncertain whether he had been intentionally excluded. Dominic spoke first. I've spent the last 6 hours reviewing internal engineering records. I also requested archived maintenance logs that nobody thought to delete. Amelia remained silent. The results were enlightening. He opened a leather folder. Inside were dozens of printed reports. Every page contained handwritten technical notes. Every note carried Amelia's signature. I discovered something interesting. He slid another document across the table. It was an executive presentation bearing Victor Hale's name. The diagrams were identical. The wording was identical. Even the handwritten calculations matched Amelia's original notebook. Dominic calmly closed the folder. For years, someone has been stealing your work. Victor immediately stepped forward. I can explain. No. Dominic didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at Victor. You've done enough explaining. Silence settled over the porch. Then Dominic asked Amelia a question she never expected. Did you create the adaptive synchronization architecture that currently controls production line 3? Yes. Did anyone else fully understand it? Amelia hesitated. I trained several engineers. But the complete calibration sequence. She slowly shook her head. I never finished documenting the final optimization. Why? Because Victor said the production schedule was more important than paperwork. Dominic slowly closed his eyes. The answer confirmed everything. He stood, turned toward Victor, and spoke with frightening calmness. Effective immediately. You are terminated. Victor's mouth fell open. You can't fire me here. I just did. You haven't even held a disciplinary hearing. Dominic's expression never changed. You falsified engineering records. You claimed credit for intellectual property that wasn't yours. You manipulated performance evaluations. And you dismissed the single employee whose expertise protected a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing operation. He paused. The hearing is over. One of the security officers quietly stepped forward. Mr. Hale, we'll escort you back to the plant to collect your personal belongings. Victor looked desperately at Amelia. Please, tell him. You know I never meant for this to happen. Amelia looked at him for several long seconds, then answered softly. I warned you. When the factory needed me, I wouldn't be there. Victor lowered his head. For the first time in years, he understood exactly what those words had meant. As the SUVs prepared to leave, Dominic turned back toward Amelia. I'd like to ask one more question. If I ask you to return, what would it take? Amelia looked toward the distant horizon before answering. This time, she already knew exactly what she was going to say. Dominic Moretti didn't interrupt. He simply waited. For the first time in years, Amelia wasn't speaking to a supervisor trying to protect his position. She was speaking to the man who actually owned the company. If I come back, Amelia said, I won't be returning to my old job. Dominic nodded. I'm listening. I want complete authority over the robotics engineering division. No production supervisor will ever overrule a technical decision again. Engineering decisions will be made by engineers. Dominic answered without hesitation. Done. Amelia continued. Second, there will be a written policy prohibiting discrimination based on appearance, gender, age, or physical condition. Performance reviews will measure results. Nothing else. Again, Dominic nodded. Agreed. Third, I want a mentorship program for women entering industrial robotics. I've watched too many talented engineers leave because they were never given a fair chance. Approved. Fourth, every employee whose career was damaged by Victor Hale's false evaluations deserves an independent review. If promotions were denied unfairly, they should be restored. Dominic looked toward Ethan Cole. "You'll personally oversee that process." Ethan answered immediately. "I will." Finally, Amelia became quiet. Dominic smiled slightly. "I expected one more condition. There is one." She looked directly into his eyes. "When I tell people the production line has to stop, it stops. I don't care how many deadlines are waiting. I don't care how much money is involved. If safety or system integrity is at risk, no executive will pressure my team to ignore it." For a brief moment, Dominic didn't answer. Then he extended his hand. "You have my word." Amelia shook it. "Then I'll come back." 2 hours later, Amelia walked through the factory gates again. The atmosphere had completely changed. Nobody whispered about her appearance anymore. Nobody stared. Instead, employees stepped aside as she crossed the production floor. Some nodded respectfully. Others quietly thanked her. Sophia Bennett was the first to reach her. "I knew you'd come back." Amelia smiled. "I came back for the people, not for the company." Inside the control room, dozens of engineers immediately gathered around. Computer screens displayed thousands of error messages collected during the previous 48 hours. German specialists explained their software analysis. Japanese engineers presented hardware diagnostics. Italian consultants summarized mechanical inspections. Amelia listened without interrupting. When they finished, she asked only one question. Did anyone compare the calibration timestamps from Robot Cell 47 against the adaptive synchronization mirror? Silence. Several engineers exchanged confused looks. One consultant slowly answered, "There isn't a documented synchronization mirror." Amelia quietly smiled. "There is. It just isn't documented." She opened an engineering terminal and began typing from memory. Long strings of commands filled the screen. Then she opened a hidden maintenance interface that none of the visiting specialists had ever seen. Noah stared in disbelief. "I forgot that existed." "You didn't." Amelia replied. "You were never told." Within minutes, a sequence of archived calibration files appeared. One file immediately caught her attention. She leaned closer. "There you are." Ethan stepped beside her. "What did you find?" Amelia pointed toward a tiny discrepancy. During a routine software update, nearly 6 months earlier, one laser-guided welding robot had failed to complete a background synchronization cycle. The backup controller silently compensated for the error. Every subsequent update inherited that corrupted timing reference. The problem grew so gradually that every diagnostic system accepted it as normal. Only when a second controller attempted to synchronize 3 days earlier had the hidden conflict finally reached its breaking point. No alarm had identified the true cause because, technically, every individual component had been working perfectly. The failure existed only in the relationship between them. No software could recognize it. Only someone who understood why the architecture had been designed that way could. Amelia quickly uploaded a corrected calibration sequence. The engineering team watched every monitor. One by one, communication indicators turned green. Hydraulic systems initialized. Laser arrays powered on. Robotic arms slowly returned to their starting positions. Then, the first conveyor belt began moving. Seconds later, hundreds of robotic units resumed their synchronized dance. The silence that had haunted the factory for 2 days disappeared beneath the familiar rhythm of motors, welders, and machinery. Applause erupted across the control room. Some engineers laughed. Others simply closed their eyes in relief. Outside, workers cheered as the first completed vehicle rolled off the production line. Ethan looked toward Amelia. "You just saved the company." She gently shook her head. "No, I saved the people who would have suffered because someone forgot that experience matters." Dominic stood beside the observation window, watching thousands of machines operate flawlessly once again. He realized something no financial report had ever shown him. Factories weren't powered by electricity. They were powered by trust. And trust had almost been destroyed by one man's ego. As another luxury vehicle rolled toward final inspection, Dominic quietly turned to Amelia. This company almost lost its future because it failed to recognize the value standing right in front of it. 1 year later, the Orion Motor Group assembly plant looked completely different. The production floor was quieter, not because fewer machines were running, but because fewer emergencies happened. Preventive maintenance had replaced constant crisis management. Downtime had dropped to the lowest level in the corporation's history, while productivity reached record-breaking numbers. The billion-dollar international contract had not only been saved, it had been expanded. Clients from Europe and Asia now visited the Michigan facility to study what many industry experts were calling one of the most advanced robotic manufacturing systems in North America. But the greatest transformation wasn't technological. It was cultural. Engineers no longer competed for recognition. They shared knowledge. Performance reviews focused on measurable results instead of appearances or office politics. The mentorship program Amelia Brooks had insisted on was thriving, with dozens of young engineers, many of them women entering industrial robotics for the first time, working confidently beside experienced veterans. Sophia Bennett had become one of the program's instructors. Whenever a new engineer asked why the department placed such importance on documentation, teamwork, and respect, she always smiled before pointing toward Amelia's office. Because one person taught us that knowledge should never belong to a title. It should belong to everyone willing to learn. Amelia herself had recently accepted a new position, Director of Robotics Engineering. The office came with a larger salary, greater authority, and a window overlooking the very production line where she had spent years solving problems nobody else could see. Yet little about her had changed. She still wore steel-toe boots. She still walked the factory floor every morning. And whenever a machine made a sound that didn't seem quite right, she was usually the first person to investigate. One afternoon, Dominic Moretti addressed the entire workforce during the annual company meeting. Unlike previous years, he didn't speak about profits, market share, or production records. Instead, he invited Amelia to stand beside him. The factory grew silent. Dominic looked across the crowd before saying the words every employee would remember for years. The most expensive mistake this company ever made wasn't a mechanical failure. It was judging talent by appearance instead of ability. He paused, then looked directly at Amelia. Talent has no shape. The person who caused the greatest loss to this company was never Amelia Brooks. The room erupted into applause. Some employees stood. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Amelia simply smiled. Not because she had finally received the recognition she deserved, but because no one else would have to endure what she once did. And somewhere beyond the noise of thousands of perfectly synchronized machines, the lesson remained louder than any factory could ever be. Never underestimate the quiet expert, because the person everyone overlooks today may be the one holding tomorrow together.